Hi, my name is Joe Pass, and welcome to my Hot Licks video. Those were not exactly hot licks, but just a little concept that I'd like to talk to you about, among other concepts on this particular tape, that I hear questions that are asked me often by young guitarists about how do you play so many substitute changes, and how do you, what are you thinking about when you're playing? And so I took a little chord pattern. I think it's, let's see now, I'm not good at numbers, but let's see, I think it's 1-6-2-5, or C major, A minor, D minor, and G7. And I tried to show some substitute changes that I would use if I had a 1-6-2-5 pattern. And a 1-6-2-5 pattern is basically in thousands of pieces, all American music, from Gershwin, Jerome Kern to Stevie Wonder, and Willie Nelson. Anyway, so I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the concepts that I would use. They're very basic and very simple, that I would use to embellish a 1-6-2-5 progression. We'll get to that in a minute. First, I think you should tune up to me so that we're in tune. I think I'm 440, I'm not sure. I hate tuning up. They told me the guitar was tuned at the factory, but, you know, but it's not, because if you check it out, but here, anyway, here's my E. Well, now that we're in tune, hopefully, I'd like to pick up where I left off about playing on a chord pattern like a 1-6-2-5, which is a C major, A minor, D minor, and G7. We're staying in the key of C. It's a good key. So, for instance, this is the C major, the A minor, D minor, and G7. First of all, let me say that when I think of chords and chord patterns, I think of everything very basic and very simple. For instance, the C and the A minor to me are simply C major. The A minor is at the sixth, but it's not really important. It's kind of like the C major in a sense. It's the same sound. You can hear it. And the D minor and G7, the 2 and the 5, I simply think in terms of the 7, G7. And the D minor just happens to be a little movement that goes with it, but I don't like to complicate my thinking up with too many theoretical changes, or too many changes that they're not. I think very basically. Basically, I think in terms of chords, major, minor, and dominant. Simple. Under the dominant family, I would include the augmented. I would include the diminished. And I would include any altered dominant seventh chord, which would be a raised 9, a flat 9, a raised 5, a flat 5. But those chords all become, for me, dominant seventh chords. So, but we'll get on to, that's another whole different concept or bag. So on the 1-6-2-5, you can play 1, 6, 2, and a 5 chord. Now, if you notice, my 1 chord was a C major 7th, my 6 chord was an A minor 9th, my 2 chord is a D minor 11, and my whatever this chord is, what is this, a 5? My 5 chord is a G13, which means that you can always alter your changes by adding tones to them. You don't have to necessarily play. And the sooner you start to add tonal, add other tones to your chords. For instance, on the 1 chord, if you could add a 9th, you can add a 6th, you can add a 6-9, you can add a major 9th, you can add a major 7th. When you add these color tones to your chords, they help to make your playing sound a little more sophisticated, a little more, little hipper, if you want to use the term. So now that's one thing you can do. So you can go. You could add Now, what you can also do is I substitute many times for a minor seventh chord, I substitute a dominant seventh chord. So in this case, for C major would be C major. For the A minor, I would substitute an A7. Now in this case, it happens to be an A7 with a raised fifth and a 13th, but so I'm substituting for the minor, A minor, I'm substituting A7. And all the variations of A7, that would mean A13, A augmented flat 9, A13 flat 9, A13 raised 9, A13 flat 5 raised 9, all the combinations of the dominant seventh that you can think of, and which would be 9ths, 13ths, would be raised 9s, flat 9s, raised 5s, and flat 5s. Those are all the tonalities you can put in the chord. There are no other ones that I can think of. So in this case, I'm having C major 7th, A 13th. Now, I also, like I said, I substitute a dominant 7th for a minor 7th. In this case, the chord is D minor. I make it a 9th or a D7. This is the substitution for D minor. It's a D13. And for the G7th, I substitute nothing. It's still a G7th, except I have, thought I fooled you that time. I thought I have G7 raised 5, raised 9. Now, another thing I could tell you about, you can always move chords chromatically. And I'm going to show you another substitution now. In other words, for the key of C, the C major, which is our first chord, the 1, I can make it an E minor, because if you notice, the sound is the same. So very close to the same. E minor and C major are related. If I put a C root on, you have... So, now I can, once I said that I can substitute for a minor chord, a dominant chord. So in this case, the C major becomes E minor becomes E7's raised 9. And we have this, so listen. So I'm substituting now E7th raised 9 for C major, coming from E minor, which is a substitution for C major. It sounds like a lot of substitutions, but it's really very simple, because what I'm getting at is this. For the E major raised 9, E dominant 7th raised 9, I should say, you can always move, like I said, your chords in a line. E7 is a substitution for C. A13 is a substitution for A minor. D7th raised 9 is a substitution for D minor 7. G13 is G13. There's no substitution. It's just an added tonality to G13. So this is what you got. This is replacing this. So what you got is, this is what we started with originally. We're substituting. You can add tones to these substitutions like this. Raised 5, 13, 6, 9. Raised 5, raised 9, 13, 6, 9. So you can always, you can go, let me get back to where I'm, gets to be a lot of substitutions pretty soon. So let me give you some examples. E 13th raised 9 can be a B flat 13 by changing the root. A 13th is A 13th. It can be an E flat 7th raised 9 by changing the root. You don't change any fingering. You don't have to get any chords that are really difficult to play. I don't believe in playing anything that's real hard. If it's real hard, forget it. because it takes you so long to finger something like that, that by the time you get it, you can't do anything else. And the object of playing so-called jazz guitar or solo guitar is to be free to play the music that you feel and hear, and not to be tied down with trying to do something that's very technical or very difficult, because it just gets in the way of the playing. And the object of playing the instrument is to play the music that you hear, as I said, and that you feel. And the instrument is just a means to express the music that you want. So I don't know how good it is to not to play real hard things, but I don't like to. Anyway, so E becomes B flat, A becomes E flat, or E flat becomes A, D becomes D and A flat. So you can move, I can't remember the word that I'm looking for, chromatically. A is B flat, A7, G7, A flat 7, B flat, A7, A flat 7, G7. That's one pattern. E7, E flat 7, D flat, D7, E flat 7. So let me show you. This is what we start with. This is substitution. Substitution. Different root. You don't have to do that one. That's the hard one. The reason I did that was because you want to keep, sometimes you can move voices back. This is the moving a voice. Sort of a little melodic line. Because things you don't want to do is this. In other words, you want to keep continuity in your chord playing. If you play a certain voicing, it's almost logical that you could move that voicing back, or by changing one note or one string, you get continuity. So the thing to keep in mind is to keep in mind melodic lines, voice movements. I keep repeating that one. Voice movements, or a common tone in your chord, like E, A, D, G, always with the G on the top. Or E, A flat. That one you can leave out. Or E, or a B flat 13th, or a E 7th raised 9 flat 5. A 7 flat 9, D 7 raised 9, G7 raised 9. So you see I have a common tone in every chord, or I'm making movements like, that's a little voice moving. Anyway, so let me once review what I was trying to talk about. I was talking about 1-6-2-5 pattern, very simple pattern, and talking about substitutions. One of the substitutions is to add color tones to your 1-6-2-5 pattern, which would be adding 9ths and 13ths, which would be 6 9ths and 13ths and major 7ths, adding those tones to your chord, to your 1-6-2-5, or changing some of the chord progression. The one chord is the one chord, it stays a one chord. You can't make the one chord a dominant chord. In other words, you can't make it a C7th in this case. But you can make the one chord an E7th raised 9. Now you can't make it a 9th, because how does this sound? That's what we're starting with now. You can't say, I'm going to make this. Doesn't seem to sound right, but how does this sound? Pretty close, because we have a tone, we have some of the tones in the one chord are included in the E7th chord. But if you make it a 9th or a 13th, you're losing That has nothing to do with, listen to the root. Let me see if I can do this. That's not right, but this will be all right. Because that is the raised ninth of E, the C. Now, of course, you don't want to play this chord because it's a dumb chord. You have to watch when you buy books that have 10,000 chords in them, I think. Because 9,000 chords are theoretically correct, but not really usable in the kind of playing we're talking about, which is if you want to play jazz pieces like Green Dolphin Street or Body and Soul and that. Theoretically, they're all correct. For instance, this chord here is called, in some books, G7 flat 9, with the flat 9 in the root, in the bass. Now, if I'm playing, and you play that for a flat 9 G7 for me, I don't want it, because it's not, it doesn't sound like, it sounds to me like a diminished. G7 flat 9 should be this. All the altered tones in your chords on the guitar, in most cases, should be on the top strings. Flat 9, raised 9, flat 5 should be in the top 3 strings. And I believe that the lower strings should be root bound, root chords. So G7 flat 9 is that. Not, so theoretically it is. So be careful when you learn chords. If you watch other players play, some of the well-known players, anybody that plays can play, you'll notice that they all use the same general grips, I'll call them, or chords. These chords are very common on the guitar. Ninth forms, these kind of forms. Very few people are playing real difficult things. Some players like to concentrate on that kind of playing, but that takes a great deal of study and a great deal of practice, and sometimes you get locked into doing something the same way all the time because that's the way you spent hours and days learning it, and it's sort of a hindrance to trying to improvise and play because you're locked into a lot of technical and theoretical information and not so much just trying to play what you hear and feel. So I might have digressed some, but anyway, where was I? So you can go 1, 6, 2, 5. You can go chromatic from E to A to D to G. You'll have to figure those numbers out yourself. You can go from B flat to A flat to G. Those are all 1, 6, 2, 5 substitutions. You can go from B flat, I sound like that guy, my name is, you can call me Joe. You can call me Joey. Forget it. So, anyway, you could go B flat, E flat, that's a cycle. B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. That is the same thing as substitute for 1, 6, 2, 5, I hope. If it isn't, you'll have to write to me. So let me play some 1, 6, 2, 5 for you. Don't ask me what that is. That's 1, B minor 7, B flat minor 7, A minor 7. Just a little movement. You can always move on the guitar chromatically into the chords that you want. In other words, you can go like this. Or... Now, why did I do that? C, this is just a movement into A minor. Just a movement. No big deal. It's E minor, it's B minor 7, B flat minor 7, which is a substitution for E, because B minor 7th and E 7th are a 2-5. so you can go like this. It's a flat 5 principle. You can move back and forth. But I'm going to A minor, so I go. So now I'm on A minor, which is the 1, which is the 6th chord. Then I don't do anything. I go to the 5 chord. Now I do, since I went like this, in my mind, my ear says, why can't I go? Where does it take me? It takes me from B flat to A minor to A flat minor. A flat minor is the 2 chord of D flat. And D flat is the flat 5 of G. This is really theoretical. I don't know why I got into so much theory, because I'm not a theory person. So here we were. But A flat minor, as I said, is the 2 of D flat. And D flat is the flat 5 of G. So that's why I can do that. So I can go. See, A flat, D flat, B, C major 7. Or A flat minor, G7, C major 7. So you see, it's all relative. So those are some movements on 1625. And what you want to keep in mind is, if you use a certain kind of a chord form, think about using it several times. Move it chromatically anyway. If you use this form, just think about moving it to A. You don't have to make any big movements. You have some a moving line, and you have nice voicing, and it works. And if you ask the question, like, what if other players are not playing those chords? Or how will it sound if I'm playing with a piano player? Well, if you're playing with a piano player, you better do what the piano player does, because he has 88 keys and he's louder than you, I always defer to the piano player because either they're louder and bigger. But the thing is, you have to make some adjustments. But if you play your chords without 6-string voicings, I mean, try not to play chords like, little chords, so that you can have a little, like, 3-note chords, inside chords. So you can move. For instance, you take these 2 notes. If I'm playing with a piano player, I'm not sure what he's doing. You have to be careful in the beginning. So if we're in the key of C, I might play this kind of a C. Just these 2 notes. So these 2 notes could be C major 7. They could be E7. They could be B flat 7. They could be G. They could be E flat major 7. They could be A flat. So you pick tones that are neutral in a sense until you know what the players are. Another thing you can do if you want to find out, every chordal player has a harmonic boundary that he plays from, that he likes to use. You'll find, usually you can tell on the turnaround of a tune what they prefer. Piano players, some piano players prefer a turnaround like, and they like that kind of a sound. So, and the reason they do it on a turnaround is because the turnaround is the place where the pianist or the chord player, the guitarist, has a choice, because there's nothing happening there. It's just the turnaround. So he can get crazy or do whatever he wants. So some turnarounds go like, it's like 1-6-2-5. Some of them all of a sudden start using all raised 9s and 13. So on a turnaround is where you listen to a piano player or another chordal player to see what their harmonic concept. Some players like a lot of minors. Some players like a lot of 2-5. Some do that all day long. You can go, let me see, you can go. Well, you can do, see, that's 1625. Or you can go, that's related to 1625 in a kind of a way. But anyway, the place to listen is on a turnaround. And the thing to do is to use chords that are kind of neutral sounding tonalities until you know what concept the piano player likes. Does he like a lot of minor sevenths, or does he like a lot of raised ninths, or is he 11th kind of a player? Does he like all these kind of stuff? But that's digressing again to some other subject. So much for the 1625. By the way, the point is that if you use substitute chords on your chord pattern we just talked about, like raised ninths and flat nines and raised fives and so forth, that also means that you could use those kind of melodic lines when you're playing. So you don't have to go. That's kind of plain. 1, 2, 6, or 1, 6, 2, 5. Those are kind of scale. You could play. That's your 6. This is your 2. This is your 5. Your, yeah. This is your 1. Because it's like an E minor 7 flat 5. I forgot about that. 1, 6, 2, 5. I'll play a little bit of single line on 1625 to show you what I would be doing if I were improvising on it. Starting with some very basic melodic lines to some more involved melodic lines, I hope. I don't know what I was doing there, doubling up a little bit. So what you can do here is maybe on the 1, that, on the 6, there's your 1, 6, 2, 5. Those are all like augmented. On the 1, 2, 5, 2, 5. This guitar goes up to D. I never knew that. No wonder I've been missing that all the time. Anyway, it's some examples of playing on 1-6-2-5, using little substitute chords. I tried to show you like the forms too that some of the runs come out of. You know, a good idea to practice if you're interested in, if you're bored with playing scales, because scales are. I mean, scale's a scale, and I find that most players, when they practice scales, don't listen to what they're doing. They just sort of go. I mean, and nothing's happening. When you do that, nothing's happening. You're not learning anything because you're not listening to the music. Because, for instance, what's going on? What is this? It's supposed to be. Every note should be clear. So, but scales can be boring because what you're doing is just running your fingers across the neck of the fretboard. So I thought of a way of making it a little more interesting, which would be to take a note, any note on the first or second string, take this note, and put a chord on it like this. E flat major 9. Strum the chord, play the root, and strum the chord. So you hear the sound of the chord, because if you want to hear the sound of the chord, it's not, it's like, get it in your ear. Start on the root of the chord, which in this case is E flat, and play the scale. Stopping on the note that the top of the chord, which is this. So you have this. Now that's sort of a scale and not a scale. It's kind of a line, because you're not going, which is a scale. You're going. Then take the same note, put another chord on it, maybe a different, maybe this chord. A7, raise 5, flat 9. Play a scale from the root, from the root. From the root and stop on the same note. Now maybe you might want to play this chord. D7, raise 9, flat 5. From the root. And every time you stop on the same note. So what you have is a pedal tone, one note on the top, and you alter the chord. Whatever chord you want to make it, augmented, diminish. You want to make it diminish? Give it a root. This diminished chord can have a root of E flat, can have a root of A, can have a root of G flat, and it can have a C, can have a root of C. And I think you can find that out by doing this. And you put a root on each one from the 5th string. Now, I'm sure that's repeated. It's the same. I'm sure that if you know anything at all about theory, you don't have to take my explanation of it. You'll understand it. You'll probably say it's because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, something up, a major third up, a third. I don't know. I don't talk about those things. I talk about listening and hearing. But anyway, what I was saying was you take a note, like I picked that note, and you put a chord on it. Give it a root. That happens to be D flat major 7, 6. The way I knew that was I found out D flat 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. That's how I learned numbers. Anyway, paint by numbers. This is D flat major 6. So you take from D flat and you play on scale. This is G7, raise 9, flat 5, same note, B flat. This is G flat 13, same note. This is A diminished, no, it's not A, it's A7 flat 9, or B flat diminished. D flat 13th. E7 flat 9, flat 5. So you see what you have then now is not just a scale that puts you to sleep or is a pattern that you don't really pay attention, but you have sounds of chords, and you have lines that build from one interval, from a root to an interval, and it gives you something more to listen to. By the way, you should always listen when you're playing. Listen to yourself. So many players I see, not many, but some, play chords that they say G7th and they go like this. Now, I mean, that doesn't belong in there. Whether you use a pick or what, that doesn't belong in there. That C is wrong. It doesn't belong in there. But if you don't hear that it's in there, or you play and you don't hear that that note is in there, how do you expect to hear anything else that's like musical? I mean, if you can't hear it, that doesn't sound right. This is a D9, nice D9, and sometimes I hear players go with the ninth in the root in the bass. So you have to listen very close to everything you play. Something I do is if I play a chord, if I don't like the sound of the chord, I mean, I always say to myself, is that the best sounding chord I can get there? Or can I play something? Can I play? I mean, I'm not going to do anything that's like, but when you grab a certain form, see what you can get out of the form just by moving a finger or two. Now, you don't have to start going. I mean, that's for the guys who want to work real hard. You use about as much as you can in the form. You try something else. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about bass lines and comping with bass lines, because a lot of guitarists ask me about that. And if you noticed, I did some of it on the when I was demonstrating the 1625 concept. Anyway, I'll play a little bit to show you. The most important thing about playing bass line and guitar is the bass line. That is the most important thing. It's not the little comping chords that go on top, though a lot of players think it is or ask me about it. The bass line has to be melodic. It has to be like a little Bach piece. It has to stand on its own. It has to be. The bass line has to be melodic. It has to stand up so that if you heard it, you would recognize the changes. Now, it's a little bit difficult to demonstrate that point on a so-called 1-6-2-5 because it doesn't go anywhere really. Because as I said before, a 1 and a 6 are the same to me, and a 2 and 5 are the same. So what we got is, so what we're doing is, so now let me show you how I do the comping on the 1-6, on the bass line. Visualize doing a shuffle rhythm like. So it's a shuffle, don't go. Shuffle rhythm. And then leave every other accent beat out. No, just... So what you do is, instead of going, you're going, you're leaving out every other shuffle rhythm beat, and you're building your bass line. So the little chords that are played on the top, in this case, happen to be dominant seventh little forms, because this lends itself to that, but it can be a major seven. Sus. Now, after you get a little bit, after you're able to move like, after you can move, I'm moving a little bit fast, I'm showing off a little bit, but after you move a little bit, then you can start adding some little syncopation to it, you know. It doesn't have to be. So you notice every other one. So you can start going. Now I'm adding some little accents and little rhythms. None of those little chord forms that I'm playing are difficult. And none of them are, in many cases, not indicative of the chord that I'm actually playing. Sometimes I'm playing G7, it's a G sus. Oh, you can do this. Now, these two notes are kind of neutral sounds. See, that could be an E minor, or an E7, or a C. If I have a C root as a bass, say I'm going to go. I go. See, these two notes are not, it's not like this. In other words, nothing that I'm playing is very difficult. The notes happen to be under my fingers around one of the bar forms, which is another subject I'd like to talk to you about on another tape, which is the subject of using bar forms to move around on the guitar. The value of understanding the bar form, like having a capo, you know, like where you see these people put the thing on, it goes like that. Well, this would be like having a capo and it's stuck in your head, see, and it hurts sometimes, but the bar form serves as a capo. And I'd like to talk to you about that sometime, and the use of it. But in building bass lines, I'll play, for instance, this 1-6-2-5 business with as much as I can think of as far as building a line. Remember, the bass line is the most important thing. It has to move logically. It can't, it's not that comping doesn't count. Anyway, that's kind of an example of building bass lines. The important thing is the bass line itself. You should be on the root at a certain place in the bar. I can't tell you exactly where that should be, but the root should be sounding somewhere within the area of the chord change. You can avoid the root. For instance, you can do this same pattern like this. That's the same. That's A7, D7, G7, C. So if I were playing a tune that had an extensive chord progression, I could demonstrate the bass line a lot clearer to you. But since I said it once again, this simple little pattern of, I call it I Love Coffee, or whatever, is restrictive in the sense that you keep going around the same cycle, and there's only so much movement you can do on the same cycle. For instance, you could play a bass line like this. I'll show you. So in other words, it's a pedal tone. So before I finish, I'll play a tune or I'll play a little piece for you or something. But there are no wrong notes in playing, you know. It's just they're in the wrong places. But there can't be a wrong note in music because there's only, how could there be a wrong note? Maybe there could. Write to me and tell me. I don't know. But I'll take the same chord pattern and play around with it. Slower. Always have a melody